I'm Craig Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact, focused on personal growth, my workbook series, The Knowledge, will help you make changes like you've never made before. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about, was my ex abusive? Okay, so obviously we're going to be talking about a more sensitive topic today, but it's important to talk about because we always talk about trying to repair things with an ex and getting an ex back and having a second chance with a relationship. But we don't want people to be mistreated or abused. And, you know, a lot of times people assume that we're talking about those kind of situations, but we're simply not. We can't cover every topic in every video. We generally mean a situation where it was fairly healthy and, you know, the partners were mostly respectable, caring, kind, thoughtful to each other. Not a situation where somebody is being abused. We don't want you to be in that situation. And we know it can be hard to get out of those situations. So, if you're going through a breakup, you're probably thinking about the behavior, your behavior, their behavior, and you're trying to look at who's made what mistakes to who. But you have to consider, was the situation bad enough that it's not worth going back to, and if it was abusive.
Exactly. And it can be really challenging to try to identify for yourself, was it bad enough? You know, was it so bad that this isn't worth repairing, that it isn't worth me going back to, or it might even be unsafe for me to go back to? And we're bringing this up because sometimes I do see this in calls where as someone is recounting the story of their relationship and their breakup, they're realizing ways that they have been mistreated and also their reactions to it, how badly they've been hurt throughout the process, and sometimes how scary it is. And I will be very straightforward with somebody if I believe that they are in danger. To me, that, you know, it's something ethical that I want somebody to be safe, and I could never recommend somebody going back to an unsafe ex. So I want to say that from the outright. One thing before we continue this video is that, like Craig said, this is a sensitive topic, so I do want to just give you all a trigger warning. If you have experienced abuse in the past, some of the things that we talk about today might be triggering and difficult to hear. If that's the case, we have tons of recommended videos that you can check out about other topics, but we will be talking about abuse today.
Yep.
I also want to say that this is not a video on the legality of abuse or battery or domestic violence, intimate partner violence. It's going to vary from state to state, from country to country, so we're not going to get into all of that. What this is going to be about is differences between mistreatment and abuse, and also how it affects you. We'll talk about different types of abuse. Sometimes you might not even realize that abuse is going on. So that's really what this video is about, is to give you some language for you to understand the severity of some of these things.
Okay.
And so all abuse is mistreatment, but not all mistreatment is abuse. What defines abuse, if you just do a simple Google search of what it means, it says to treat somebody, or an animal even, with cruelty or violence, especially regularly or repeatedly. And so what's important to note here is that there is a regularity to it usually, and it normally is something that happens more than once. Now, that's not always the case. There can be one instance of abuse, and that can be enough for you. I know, speaking personally for me, if any partner of mine, really even any friend, had laid a hand on me or has ever been violent to me, that would be the end of it for me personally. That is my boundary. So it might be different for you, but just so you know, the term abuse generally is associated with repeated offenses.
Okay. So there are different types of abuse, okay? Obviously, physical abuse, hitting, pushing, causing some kind of physical pain. Obviously, it can get pretty severe, and you can hear some really sick, twisted things and different types of abuse. So physical. But it's not just physical. Mental or emotional abuse, okay? Gaslighting, okay? Putting somebody down, controlling them, isolating you, all different ways to manipulate you further and get further control over you. Okay, so you got to be very careful. Verbal abuse, insults, name calling. You know, there can be some really horrible things people can say verbally to each other. Sexual abuse. Obviously, there are different types of sexual abuse or situations where somebody's forcing you to do something or doing something to you forcibly, manipulating you into doing something, guilting you. There are a lot of different ways people can use this against you.
And even in a partnership, even in a relationship, this can happen. Just because you are in a relationship with somebody does not automatically give the other person consent. You know, each instance, each moment of a sexual activity is a consensual one and is a negotiation.
Financial abuse. You don't think it, but there are a lot of ways people can manipulate you and control you by controlling the finances and leaving you with no way to take care of yourself or escape or be free. So look out for that.
And I see this one with long distance relationships, especially international ones. You know, if one person moves to another country and they're in a more vulnerable position, the partner will say, okay, well, you can use my car under these circumstances. You know, if you're good, then you can have access to these resources. And if you're bad, whatever that might be, you lose access.
Yeah, I heard a story not too long ago on the news. I think it was a big news story about I think it was a pastor who did that to his wife, and he was like a really famous one too.
Wow.
And there was he was caught on the Ring camera, so it was pretty bad. Threats, that's abusive. Aiming at humiliating somebody, intimidating somebody. You know, you can threaten somebody with different ways, you know, violence against them. If you do this is what's going to happen. Maybe they'll threaten to hurt your friends and family too. If you say anything to anybody. You know, things like that. And again, you know, these things are often intentionally and repeatedly or regularly. Okay?
I will say one thing about threats too, and this is one thing that Margaret would always at least have a little red flag in her mind when somebody would bring up. But she used to think that somebody punching holes in the walls sometimes was a threat.
Yep.
You know, saying, I'd rather punch this object instead of you, or I'm punching this wall and you're next,
Yep.
or I'm hurting this animal in our home and you're next.
And my stepfather used to do that. He would get drunk, he was bipolar, and he would punch holes through the wall. Like, literally, he'd get right in front of me, and then he'd just punch a hole through the wall.
Wow.
Right in front of me. Yep.
Yeah. And that's intimidation. You know, that's saying I'm capable of doing this and causing harm. Yeah. So things that you want to consider if you see that your partner has been engaging in some of these behaviors, really assess for yourself. Am I in an abusive situation? Another thing you want to consider is if you see recovery and change. We've been talking about abuse being something repeated and intentional and, you know, over time. If this is a one instance where, let's say it was something like verbal abuse, it was one instance and that person has taken accountability and you've also seen change. Okay, this is important.
Not, I promise to change.
Right. A lot of times perpetrators, abusers, toxic people will give you this promise of change, but actually no follow through. Or they will only change for a temporary period.
Yeah.
And then go right back to those behaviors. Yeah. And so at that point, you have a decision. Is this something where I'm seeing growth and improvement in this person or not? And like I said, you can decide that. If one offense is enough for you, then that is what it is. I know for me personally, like I mentioned, if somebody lays a hand, it's done. You know, and that's my boundary. So think about some of those things for yourself. You know, what would you have to see in order to make this work? Are some things forgivable? Are some things not? So these are things you have to consider. I will also say, with that being said, that sometimes abuse can be so normalized that you don't even realize it's abuse. And that's a big part of why we're doing this video, is that we want you to understand that the ways that we have just mentioned, it's not normal, it's not okay. Okay, so if you do find that somebody is treating you like that over time, have this be your wake-up call. If labeling it abuse helps you to realize how severe it is, then we hope that that can get you out of that situation.
Yep.
We see this a lot when people are looking back at their childhoods. Sometimes we'll ask questions like, well, did your parents ever hit you, let's say? And they'll say, yeah, they hit me all the time. I would have marks and bruises, broken bones, all of these things. But if we were to ask, well, were you physically abused? They would say, oh, no, my parents were just disciplining me.
Yeah.
And so this is why language is so important, is that, labeling it abuse can actually help you heal through it. You'll understand, no, this was serious, this was bad, and I didn't deserve it. So I'm hoping that some of this language can help you, and some of what we're talking about can give you a different perspective.
It's tough when you're talking about a general situation like this, because, how do you define it? How do you label it? You know what I mean? There's a lot of gray areas, and so it's not necessarily easy to do. But you got to consider how that behavior or situation or whatever took place is impacting you and your mental health. If you're really struggling and you're hurting and you're depressed and you're scared or whatever's going on, that's a sign that it's really abusive, and you gotta find a way to get yourself safe. And you could look for resources locally that can help you, that are trained in those situations to help you through it, because some people are in real danger in these kind of situations. Mm-hmm. But they have training to get you through it.
Exactly. And we also keep going back to how it affects you, because this is what's most important. If you are safe or not, if you are being repeatedly hurt. One thing that I will say that I do see often from people who come out of situations out of mental control or emotional abuse, in those situations, sometimes people will have a difficult time making decisions. Sometimes I've seen situations where partners will even control what the other person wears or what the other person eats. Mm-hmm. So coming out of that relationship, they realize they have no control of their lives because their partner had total control. So they have this huge sense of feeling lost and confused. So that can be one of the effects of that type of experience, that type of abuse. You also might see some symptoms of PTSD if the abuse was traumatic in that sense. Could be general skittishness, being afraid of others. It could be nightmares and flashbacks even. If you keep having these bad dreams about what your ex did or your ex doing this again, that in itself is a sign, no, this was something serious that needs attention.
Yep. So one of the big things that you really want to think about is it safe to go back to that person? How safe is it? Not just is it safe, black or white, how safe is it? Very safe? Right. Is it somewhat safe? Is it not safe? Is it dangerous? And you got to think about your safety and, find professionals that can help you stay safe, right?
Right. And I also want to say kind of a bit of a strange thought, but sometimes people can even use a breakup as an abuse tactic. I'm threatening you with a breakup if you don't do this or that. Or, it's over, knowing that you are dependent on them and they're using that as a way to get to you. So just be aware of these things, really protect yourself. Of course, not all situations of mistreatment are going to be abuse. And of course, people do have the ability to recover and change and become different people. But after a breakup, you have to set your own personal boundaries. Yep. If I am treated like this again, I'm going to have to step away from this situation.
Yep.
So sometimes you can be in a vulnerable state after a breakup that you'll accept anything from an ex. We don't want that for you.
Safety is critical, and I highly recommend you find somebody in your area that specializes with abuse to keep you safe. Okay, they often make sure they have training or a lot of experience because they know what happens and the cycle of abuse that will happen or could happen. Okay, so I'd recommend you do that. If you'd like to get my help personally, you could go to my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Coach Victoria is also available for Skype coaching.
I'm here whenever you're ready.
Just click on her name on the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.